Okay, hello and welcome. I'm Ivan Cobb, and this is the boxing gathering. Presentation tonight is around the campfire, and we're looking to discuss the importance of remaining hydrated and how to stop becoming dehydrated. Our gatherers around the campfire tonight are Nick Griffin, who's led coach education for many years within England Boxing. John Dennis, a coach educator himself. Macaulay Owen, Coventry University, got a master's degree in nutrition, and Mark Bennington, who's a very keen runner, also a boxing coach, and knows a lot around hydration and dehydration. But our main leader of this tonight is Ken Waddington, who also works in the coach education program within Yorkshire. Over to you, Ken.
Right, thank you, Ivan. Thanks for that. Evening, men.
Good evening.
Really, I just want to know your thoughts on dehydrating to make the boxers wait. Should the information be aimed at coach education? Should it be put into coach education? Most boxing coaches will know about the effects on the brain from dehydrating your boxer, but I'm not sure they all know about other bad effects it has on your body, heart, blood, lungs, things like that. And I just wondered, I've actually approached England Boxing about putting this subject on the level 1 coaching courses. I sent them some information through, which I think it was discussed at subcommittee, I'm not really sure. But to be fair, it was just done before breakdown. Lockdown. So I don't know if it's going ahead yet. I haven't heard anything, but I don't know if it's going ahead yet. And I just wondered what your views were about, first of all, dehydrating the boxers to make the weight, and how we can take it forward to educate.
I think it's risky even describing methods of dehydrating on a coaching course, because if someone was seriously injured in a boxing ring, and the coach then said, well, I was taught how to dehydrate boxers effectively on a coaching course, that could reflect very badly on us. It's dangerous, it undermines performance, and I think the only way we should cover it on a coaching course is to say that it's unacceptable and explain better ways of making weight.
I've just so what education the boxers were at, because a lot of them ask, what can I do to maintain my weight or drop my weight? And I found that, so I was asking them a few questions, and I found that almost all of my boxers, in fact all of my boxers, didn't know how many calories per gram of carbohydrate, how many calories per gram of fat, sort of what an adequate hydration level was, what signs and indications of dehydration, good hydration. You really didn't know. So I mean, that's from my own club experience, but and experienced boxers I've found don't even know the real fundamentals of nutrition and hydration.
Yeah, I think what it is, Mark, I think I agree with you. I think it's across board mainly, and I was going to mention new coaches, obviously level 1 coaching courses, but I don't think it's only level 1 coaching courses. Level 1 coaches, I think it's basically a lot of old school coaches as well. They're just done, and they're quite reluctant. Sorry.
I think there's a lot of pressure. I'm not sure about each individual person. I'd like to get their views on it, but I think there is a lot of pressure on coaches to sort of know, I'll get off. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach at all by any means. I've covered it in certain courses. I've got a good foundation knowledge from training myself and being amongst other experienced coaches, but I get asked strength and conditioning questions, hydration questions, nutrition questions. So I think there is a lot of pressure on coaches to sort of be, cover all angles really. And it's one thing I found with the courses. There's only so much you can cover in them 4 days or however many days this particular course is. So something like 1-day workshops, I think it would be a great idea.
Yeah. It could be a stepping stone anyway, Mark.
We have done a 1-day course, sorry, a half-a-day course actually, basic nutrition and hydration in the East Midlands. It's always well received, but unfortunately you tend to be working with quite a small number of coaches. Most coaches don't have the time or the inclination to attend.
Mm-hmm.
Like dehydration, I think it's a really, top subject to discuss and to.
Well, it can be a killer, can't it?
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's not only that, isn't it? It's all of the other aspects. It affects the performance, it affects the heart rate, affects how the nutrition's carried.
And with kids, it's arguably physical abuse.
Yeah, well, especially under 18-year-old, it is deemed that. I think I'm not sure if I'm right in saying that, but I think it is both. Yes, it's definitely
certainly on a safeguarding course, we would certainly discourage it.
Yeah.
I just jump in. Like quite a bit of research that's been put out there. I did a recent presentation recently for the coaches gathering, and like a lot of it, let's say the evidence on the brain and the effects of dehydration to the brain, even though there isn't a large amount of evidence at the minute, but what is found is like things like confusion, fatigue, slows reaction time. And I think, like, especially with there's limited evidence to suggest a successful outcome in amateur boxing due to such a limited refeed period. So if you're dehydrating anybody with that short period of time between when they're then boxing, if they're still confused, if their reaction times are reduced, you're limiting their performance and you're putting their health at massive risk. Even though that the effects on the brain aren't well known at the minute, those effects of taking those blows, like you're just opening up a whole box of worms of potential risks for the boxers, especially when you're talking about kids under the age of 18 and that kind of thing. And especially like I've just done quite a bit of research on coaches and what they believe, and the coaches' perception of other coaches is the biggest barrier currently. It is a large barrier in boxing in the population, because you got to think how many people are actually level 1 boxing coaches. You've got such a diverse population in amateur boxing that are level 1 coaches. And I know full well I've just completed my master's degree, and obviously I'm trying to specialise in combat sport and this kind of like weight making protocols. And even I'm still confused about it. There's that much that goes in between it. You can't just say you're going to dehydrate someone. It's their preparation in the lead up to it if they're going to do it. And that's where you've got professional athletes do it. You might have GB doing it, but that's elite sport. They need golds, whereas your average boxer, the risk that it's bringing to them, it surely can't be worth that risk, really. But just from the research, I mean, there's more research into like heat stroke, and when you start talking about different methods of dehydration, you're increasing boxers' risk to heat stroke. And that somewhere down the line, I just read a recent review. There's an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, so heart rates, heart attacks, and that's just sudden heart attacks. So those who did have heat stroke at some point in their life had a greater risk of heart attacks. So these dangerous effects, it's really not worth it, especially not in amateur boxing. Maybe somewhere along the line, if you need to get paid and you're struggling for the weight, but to be given the general population of coaches that knowledge, they're just going to push the boundaries, and they're going to try and push it. And the risk to boxers, especially amateur boxers, with the limited refeed period and the age of the boxers you're working with, it's really not worth it.
I totally agree with Colin. I think the window for rehydration, there should be a rehydration strategy in place. Obviously, professional athletes have 24-hour rehydration program in place. I think a lot of coaches learn by overhearing parts of conversations. They'll obviously be calculating to actually work out how much that individual boxer needs time to rehydrate, etc., etc. That's very, very individual to that boxer. And I think most coaches just blanket coach people. Does that make sense? At work, they've heard it once, so they do it for everybody rather than the individual.
Yeah, especially that is the point. It might work for a professional athlete who's had a week's preparation with a professional nutritionist who's been in there, who's monitoring exactly what they're eating, exactly what they're consuming, what they're drinking throughout that time period. Whereas, and that's why they had the results they had at the end of the day. It might have worked for them with that preparation, but then like transferring that into an amateur boxer who's been working all week, eating whatever they want or restricting, they just start pushing the boundaries. You're going to have boxers restricting foods, restricting fluids. It's just going to increase the risk. If you're promoting these kind of practices, people are just going to grab it by the horns and push it and just say, well, it was all right. Or the alternative is they don't tell you what they actually did. They say, well, I only did this, but then this is another thing that my research has found. I can't state it completely because it's obviously not published or anything like that. But what's found is that a certain of the boxers population, the boxers themselves are reporting a greater amount than the coaches. So the coaches don't actually know what their boxers are doing or boxers in general are doing.
Yeah.
So if the coach then pushes them to do more, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just increasing the amount that people are going to think, like, they're able to do.
But and as you've just mentioned, McCall, by using these methods, this can come back to bite boxer in 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years time through ill health. Do you know what I mean? Art, different things. Yeah, I agree with that. You just covered that.
Yeah.
Do you not think we're missing a trick, as in obviously the dangers of dehydration are important to highlight, but should we not be highlighting just how the positive benefits and performance benefits you can gain from being fully hydrated, particularly over high intensity sports? Maybe that's educating the coaches on good hydration strategies rather than so we're covering both bases. We're covering the dehydration strategies, as in the dangers, but we're also looking at the potential benefits of a fully hydrated boxer, and the potential advantages we can get.
Yeah, that's what the research shows, isn't it? Like the decreases in performance are shown, but actually, so those who were adequately hydrated had that increase. So whereas I'd say like aerobic performance is decreased by greater than 2% in a dehydrated state, well, actually, you could then obviously convert it to being, well, performing in a hydrated state, you're increasing your performance by greater than 2% compared to somebody who's dehydrated.
Mark, you'll be very familiar with trying to run dehydrated. Basically, you just can't do it at any pace, can you? Yeah, just no time.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of ultra running. I mean, my longest race I did was 45 hours, and I worked out that after a 26-hour period, I'd drunk 22 litres, and I was still dehydrated, which is, typically, I would say more, but the average person, Macaulay would know better than me, but at least a litre per hour during exercise, and athletes with generally less fat and more muscle would sweat more, and it's just a killer. Yeah, absolutely.
I've even heard old school coaches complain when boxers drink during training. We have quite a few barriers to break down. We're the opposite way. We insist that they drink every few minutes, even if it's only sips.
I recently watched a video podcast by the GSSI, the Gatorade. They've obviously it's not my research, it's none of that research, but they comment on some research about that, actually saying how some marathon runners who to basically exaggerate their hydration strategies end up actually putting on weight by the end of the thing. And this is where the individualization of the athletes, of your boxers, is so important, because if you're prompting somebody to drink and yet their sweat rate across that session isn't actually that high, then you're potentially increasing the risks for them to be like stomach cramps, gastrointestinal issues, their performance being decreased again by them over consuming water. Does that make sense?
Occasionally.
Yeah. Did you have a strategy moving into your event? Did you have a hydration strategy? Actually?
Yeah, I would generally just try and mix up water and isos, and I would have sort of foods that contain salt in and things like that. It was difficult because there's a lot of factors coming into it, you know, over that period. It's the heat was I don't know if you remember the hottest day last year. It was actually on the hottest day. So that, you know, it's the weather you're going to get on the day. But typically during a marathon, it tends to be a lot easier. Gels people use, I personally don't use them. I just use an ISO. But over a marathon, I tend to be okay. Tend not to get any GI distress or sort of muscle cramps or anything like that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think that the main thing for coaches, but from my perspective, is the monitoring. So to just avoiding your boxers from reducing make sure you're avoiding boxers losing too much fluid throughout the session. So those like pre-session to post-session weigh-ins a couple of times just to see what that boxer individually does lose throughout the session. And obviously just to maximise their performance by reducing the amount that they are actually sweating. Every boxer's sweat rate is going to be different. So if you can see with your eyes that one of the boxers is sweating like excessively, then it's just they're obviously going to need that water. But then if you've got a boxer who's not putting so much work in, who or maybe just doesn't sweat so much themselves, then if you're promoting them to be drinking as well, that you can obviously come across these gastrointestinal issues or stomach cramps. There's a lot more to it. This is why I think educating, especially like your general coaches on such things, that there's room for them to misinterpret what you're telling them and therefore take it the wrong way and then pass on misled information further.
Macaulay, just an interest in what I always find fascinating. So you've got a boxer in a contest where the coach 9 times out of 10 have a drink. One, the boxer might not want a drink. 2, the boxer might not need a drink. And 3, how the drink's actually applied to the boxer. I've heard loads of elite boxers been absolutely washed, had water poured down the throat with their gagged, etc., etc., etc. I don't know if they've ever rehearsed. I don't think people ever rehearse hydration or in a contest, because a contest to train will be, in my opinion, totally different with the nerves and all the rest of it. I don't know if you've had any research about actually in the competitive state, so the training state, how water's administered and what's the best way.
I haven't really got much research for that. The research is very new in boxing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's massive scope for research to come out. I'm not aware of any at the minute.
In terms of hydration, the drinks you give them during the rounds are virtually pointless because there's no chance it would get into the blood in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I think we just do it because it's traditional and maybe to make the mouth a bit more comfortable. But in terms of hydration, I think we're wasting our time.
There is research to suggest that even swirling liquid in your mouth can give you the perception of being in a hydrated state. So if they were dehydrated, or if they were, I know I sweat an awful lot during contests, like excessively. So by the end of the fight, I know I've lost a lot of sweat. So just that fluid in my mouth, especially with the cooling. I mean, Mark may know about cooling strategies and stuff like that. If your boxers dehydrated, their ability to regulate the thermal regulatory ability basically is decreased, so that water in their mouth that could benefit them an awful lot, especially if it's cold. So taking something on board could work. There is a scientific justification behind it as well.
So it's not getting into the bloodstream, but it's sort of tricking the body into thinking that it is.
It's like carbohydrate rinsing as well. Like if you've been training in the fastest state, you need a little bit of a boost. You carbohydrate rinse. You rinse a carbohydrate solution. It's the same goes with water and cold beverages.
Mm.
To,
Yeah, interesting. We talk about boxers not being able to drink. Nick's just mentioned it earlier on, coaches not allowing boxers to drink. I know a coach he were actually coaching his son. He was an active boxer, young lad. Well, I'm saying young, about 15-year-old. And it actually got him not only sitting in a sauna, it got him doing a circuit training in a sauna. This is how dangerous people are. And this is why I'm wanting to sort of, I don't know, get it, like I said, get it out there and get these coaches, well, make them aware at least.
Dangerous.
As I say, I'm sure there must be somebody in an organisation like we've got
Do we
that's got
feel
knowledge. Can pass that knowledge on.
Do we feel it's a bigger problem? Do we feel it's a bigger problem now? Particularly, I can't remember what year it was when we lost light middleweight and we lost 71 kilos, and there's if we're talking elite level boxing, there's now some categories of 6 kilos between weight divisions, and then that's massive. If you're sort of caught in the middle ground, you've got to make that choice, and not a lot of boxers like to go up, do they?
Yeah, you're right. It encourages dehydration when you reduce the number of weight categories, without doubt.
So I think that's because I was a natural 71, 67 I couldn't make, 69 was a push, so 69 it was. In hindsight I should have been 75, but and I know I was encouraged to go to 69 because you don't go up, you go down. Yet we're telling boxers go down, and actually maybe we should be saying more. You can have that. You can have your recovery fuels and drinks and eat well. Eat healthy, but eat well and build up to that weight and be strong. But it's still that tradition of hang on, you can make that weight and get you'll be strong at the weight. But
the assumption of so many coaches is that the lowest weight is the optimum weight, and it often isn't.
Yeah, and it's encouraged almost, and boxers aren't always the strongest. You can sometimes see it, particularly in the last round, when they're sort of wilting a bit.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ken, I was going to say, have you seen any of the MMA weigh-ins where they are virtually carrying the fighters to the scales? They seem to have an even worse problem than pro boxing.
Yeah.
Seems inhuman what they're doing.
A young lad that I used to train, that I used to coach as amateur, quite a good amateur as well. They went pro. He's recently retired, last year actually retired. And he went on a level 1 coaching course. He's got a club down in Wakefield. And he was telling us on coaching course, he went 2 days without food and just sips of water to actually make weight on his last, I don't know if his last profile or one before, to make weight. And this is kind of things that are going on. It's absolutely stupid. But not only that's in pro, but it's happening in amateur a lot as well. And, that's my genuine concern, really. That's what I do. So try airing it on here.
I think, like you say, those kind of practices do happen, and if you give anybody that inch, they'll take a meter. Do you know what I mean? And then you will end up seeing those kind of practices happening in amateur boxing. And if somebody's got a professional, if somebody's got a nutrition professional on board, I mean, this might be where you would say on a level 1 coaching course, if you've got a boxer who's looking to do something or thinking about it, then that's when you do promote the nutrition professional and say there are people who are with knowledge on this and that they know exactly what to be doing. Maybe if you were looking to do it, go towards somebody else. But I mean, the level 1 coaches, that they will take that. They'll see what the professionals have done. They'll see that they might have won after doing it as well, which just it like escalates the problem, doesn't it? Because these people see it as being a benefit, to their performance, when that was that person on that day, and it's not relevant. Look, it's not relevant to another population at all. So I think that's what you really should be doing, deferring these people to nutrition professionals for a professional viewpoint, not a general population's perception of what may benefit an athlete.
But also providing them with good education that can develop them as coaches.
Yeah. That's when the nutritional professionals are going to come in.
Corey, can I ask you, there is an element of, if your body sort of lacks homeostasis, so if you tend to cut water, it will hold water, is that right? So,
sorry, say again.
Your body in terms of likes to find its balance. So ultimately, if you withhold calories and fuels and hydration, it tends to be less efficient overall. Is that right?
What do you mean? Sorry.
So for example, someone who's constantly holding back on rehydrating, the body becomes less efficient at sort of recycling it, and so ultimately they hold more water by intaking less. Your body actually tends to hold on to it.
Yeah, well, hold on to it. That could definitely happen. But I believe that when you're in a dehydrated state, if you stay there for too long, if you ask your body to then take more fluid from it, you're definitely it's just not gonna come. You're definitely not gonna be able to do it. And I believe recently that there was a professional boxer who attempted a weight cut on fight week, and they did that. They started the cut too soon. They depleted their body of their stores, and then all of a sudden they couldn't get anything out, and wondered why that wasn't the case. When that would definitely would have contributed to the difficulty. Definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Macaulay, am I right in saying that repeated dehydration can also lead to kidney damage?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, I know. I know some clubs who do promote it, weigh himself at the end of the session, and then see it as a benefit, see it, get on the scale, see how light you are. Do you know what I mean? And then that repetitive dehydration increases the risk for acute kidney damages. You're putting your body out of its balance, out of the homeostasis, which is bringing health detrimental effects to all boxers who's doing that. Definitely. People don't see it. It's what's happening underneath, isn't it? People can be striving to get to a certain weight and constantly and staying at that weight, when realistically bodies change, but your body water in particular change, it fluctuates. You hold on to water depending on what you've had that day. So if you're constantly trying to strip that water from your body, it needs it for digestion of food, it needs it for transportation of nutrients around your body. The repetitive nature of excessive dehydration is just it's not good for your body at all. Professional athletes do it because they get paid a lot of money if they make weight, and that might just be their strategy. But for amateur boxers who are doing it for fun, to start doing this, doing that, and pushing the boundaries, it's just setting them up for negative effects.
Long-term health problems.
Yeah, long-term health problems, exactly. So it's like the weight fluctuations as well. There's evidence to suggest that increases your risk of metabolic diseases down the line. It's what you're doing to the boxers, especially if you're starting doing it from a young age. It's what you're doing to their health on the long term as well. What happens when they finish boxing? What damage has been created? Yeah.
I also understand that if you are depriving a young body of fluid and food, you are in effect stunting their growth, because they get growth periods that the height change takes off, and if they're not being fed properly at that time, then they never get that growth back. You are restricting their growth for life.
Yeah, that was the main concerning point for my dissertation. I've just received the grade for was that especially in amateur boxing, you're dealing with kids that are young, that are growing, that maturation period of their body. Their bodies need to grow. Their bodies need to develop. If you're limiting the food, if you're limiting the water, you're putting them up for poor maturation. Even if it's prolonged, if they then mature along the lines, they're missing out on that vital growing period of their life. And to be honest, that's what most coaches commented, saying was the most important thing, that they were moving boxes up because of that they were allowing their boxes to grow, which is a benefit. But then I guess if you do put something like this to spark people to then decrease what they're giving young boxers further, yeah, that's definitely going to they'll push the boat and they'll decrease what they're, and obviously putting them at risk for that the lessened maturation and development of the young athletes. Yeah.
So what grade did you get for the dissertation then?
I got 68% on that one. I got two marks off the first on that one, so I'm going, where's my supervisor now?
Good luck.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah.
I think with amateur. Oh, sorry, Macaulay.
Far away, Mark. Go.
I think with amateur, there's also that problem. I know the pros have the long duration fights, but I think with the amateurs, especially the more experienced elites, is the tournament format. You know, potentially boxing 3 times in 3 days. That can be a problem.
Yeah, massive. You're depleting, and then you're trying to refeed, and then you're trying to deplete what you've just refed. And obviously, up at GB, they might do it over a tournament, but I know a lot of their tournaments are a few days between at least, so they've got that recovery period. But if you're asking boxers to dehydrate by whatever means at the end of you've probably also like seen it already. You'll see the boxers skipping off after they're finished, and then in the attempt to make weight the following morning. But then you've got to think over that full weekend. If you've made weight on that Friday morning, let's say it's a kid who's like middleweight range, is going to be boxing early afternoon, and then if they're then skipping off, dehydrating themselves again, well, they've probably only had 2 to 3 hours in a hydrated state, which wouldn't be a hydrated state because it would have took them time to then rehydrate. So they've got an hour of it in a hydrated state, and then they've got to repeat that on a Saturday and on a Sunday. Over the weekend, you've got 3 to 4 hours of being in a fully hydrated state, and that's still not even guaranteed. So you've got a kid potentially sitting in a dehydrated state for a full weekend, and that's where I'll always, any kids, anyone, I'll always say to them, like, there's just not much point in it. I think that there should be an emphasis on educating coaches on how to influence their boxers on making weight correctly and safely, and any form of dehydration, or if they want to bring that into their time in the sport, then obviously the professionals who are educated are the ones to seek advice, and the limited time for the refeed is just a massive no-go for these amateur boxers.
It can be so difficult to get through to 1 or 2 old style coaches, and it can be hard to get through to 1 or 2 of the boxers in your own club. I've known several over the years that think it's a good idea to train in a sweatsuit when they've not got a bout coming up for 3 months. And I can tell them a million times, pointless, you'll just pee less later, but the next training session, they're back in with a sweatsuit. Absolute idiots. And some coaches are just as difficult to get through to.
Yeah, it's an interesting that one. I had a discussion recently because I know a couple of people who do train in sweatsuits quite regular in the attempt to make a certain weight, or they think it's beneficial to their boxing. But you got to think a sweatsuit's there to basically put on an extra stress on your body, which is the heat. So if you put in an extra stress on the body, which is heat, if you're trying to then perform the same amount of work, then it could potentially be beneficial. Let's say if you was to sit on a treadmill at 13 kilometers an hour or something like that, if you had an additional stress on your body, then it's better for the training purpose. So you create an additional stress. But if you're training boxing in a sweatsuit and you're shadow boxing, you're hitting a bag and you're hitting a pad, you're not physically going to be able to sustain the same intensity with that sweatsuit on as you would have been if you had been in your shorts and t-shirt. I mean, so realistically, you're setting yourself up to perform like inadequately compared to what you would have been able to achieve if you weren't.
You'll under-train because you won't have the capacity to train properly.
Exactly. The additional stress means you're not going to be able to sustain that intensity, and you're going to take that intensity that you've been training with. You're more likely to take that intensity into the competition. What are your views on the training sweatsuit and that? I mean, do you let people do in your gym if they want to?
No,
I think that should be.
In the past, I've kind of tolerated one or two, but it's just ridiculous. And I've got to the stage where not quite it's my way or the highway, but if it's really basic instructions that you can't follow, then probably time to move on. But you never get that far these days. Most of them will listen to you, and wearing a sweatsuit in training is not acceptable. And so now we don't have it these days, but I've had it over the years in the past.
Yeah.
So just summing that up, what do you think we need to do or present or form to make coaches more aware of this situation? And how can we promote that through whatever media there is out there? And what would be the chances of coaches abiding to it?
There's two types of coach, Ivan. Those that want to know it all and those that already know it all. And you'll always struggle to get through to that second group. And the first group, the more education and training opportunities you give them, the better.
And how do you think we could best do this? Would it be something that you'd be interested in, Macaulay, putting something together for, like a nice brochure or something around dehydration and hydration with the help of the panel and that?
And a one-day seminar, Macaulay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. At the end of the day, I'm passionate in educating boxers, because that's why and coaches, because that's why I got into nutrition myself, because like growing up and obviously been competing boxing since I was 13. I'm now 23, and obviously it's only in the recent years of boxing that I've had the support from nutrition, and I've really uncovered what you can achieve through good dietary practices and good nutrition habits. So definitely, if I can then help the amateur boxing population to increase safety, performance, anything, I'd love to do that. Yeah. So if I could put together anything to help you guys out, definitely.
On that note, thank you very much. Been a pleasure to listen to you all chat around, and there's been some really good stuff come out of this. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for joining us today on The Box Gathering. We welcome the global boxing community to connect and share together in order to grow participation, engagement and performance in all of our boxers. Join the discussion on social media or visit theboxgathering.com for more interviews, skills videos, literature reviews, bout analysis and more. The Box Gathering, in partnership with England Boxing. Connect, share, grow.